good to be back with you again, another morning live for Bible study. If you are here live with us, I always love to see you. Let me know that you're here through either the comments or the chat feature. Even if you're by delay, feel free to go ahead and let me know that you watched. And I also love to hear feedback, love to see questions. And if I see the questions, in fact, I have the chat live up over here. If I see the questions live and I see them in time and have time, then I love answering them live if we're able to. Well, all of this is brought to you courtesy Monday through Thursday of Christ Table. If you'd like to find out more about Christ Table, we would love to let you know more about who we are. You can go visit www.christtable.today. I would encourage you, when you get there, it would be great if you would donate to help us actually fund what we do here each and every day. But I would love for you to sign up for the email list. If you aren't on our email list, why not? Go do it. Go sign up for the email list. We would love to keep you updated on things that are going on around Christ Table. One of the main things that we do are these Bible studies. And you can be a part of this Bible study by visiting go.christtable.today/BU and download the entire reading schedule so that you are able to track with us over the coming weeks as we go through this topic. You can also get the book that's the foundation for this topic, Ian Crone's The Road Back to You. And because this is a personality Bible study, which is looking at the Enneagram, which is a personality type test, you can take that personality test right there at go.christtable.today/BU. There's one that will give you a little bit more information that I think is around $12. And there's one that's there for free so that you can better know which type you are, which is going to help you understand which of these weeks of Bible study resonate most with you and those around you. A couple of other things I want to make sure that you're aware of. Tomorrow night, Wednesdays at 8 p.m., make sure you're working through this book in a book study, and would love to have you be a part of that. We're on chapters 3 and 4 this week. If you want the book, there is a link at that go.christtable.today/BU, and you can get it on Amazon there. The Road Back to You, chapters 3 and 4, you can log on to that URL. Go to christtable.today/discuss tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern, and we will be there waiting on you to have a discussion about chapters 3 and 4. And if all of these URLs and information, if it's all just too much for you, go to the website and sign up for the email list, and we'll make sure that you have all of the information that you need to know. One more thing, this Sunday we are having an in-person gathering in South Florida, in Jupiter. Would love to have you there, right here in the cabin. And so you can be a part of that by just showing up. And if you're not sure where to show up, I bet you can guess what I'm going to say. Sign up for the email list, www.christtable.today. Let's dig in. As we come to this Bible study, one of the things that we are doing is utilizing the lens of the Enneagram to look differently at some very familiar Bible characters. Today, we're going to look a little bit more closely at the person of Esther. And Esther is an absolutely incredible character in the Old Testament. Now, many of us may have heard the story of Esther growing up. Maybe you didn't, but if you did, Esther kind of comes off as a little two-dimensional. But when you actually read the short book of Esther, it is a incredibly complex. I just about spilled the coffee here. I'm getting way too excited about Esther. It's an incredibly complex and chaotic story. And so what we're doing is we're looking through the lens of the book of Esther and the character of Esther through her personality to try to understand it a little bit more. And we're using, as we've been saying, the Enneagram in order to do that. And yeah, I thought I had that here. Yeah, we've got that right here. So the Enneagram is a personality mousetrap that kind of places people in 9 different categories. And last week we looked at 8, which is the challenger personality, the bold person who's fighting for injustice. And this week we're looking at 9, the person who is a peacemaker, typically the quiet person in the back of the room who's working behind the scenes in order to keep the peace. And this is generally what we assume to be Esther's personality type as well. So how do you know? If you're a 9, or if someone you know is perhaps potentially a peacemaker personality type? Well, type of person who fits this personality type wants to have peace of mind and bring harmony between people. People who are peacemakers tend, though, to fear being disconnected or having tension between others. And so it's part of the motivation or the foundational drive for there to be peace is for there to be a diminishment of tension and disconnection. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but the thing that they oftentimes struggle with is being lazy, being too reserved, being unwilling to get involved, being lackadaisical. Now, you might be a 9 if you're agreeable, complacent, easygoing, patient, forgetful, open-minded, indecisive, accepting, and sometimes stubborn and passive-aggressive. Whenever all of that tension is inside somebody who is a peacemaker, it sometimes can come out in ways where they become stubborn or where they become passive-aggressive. So when we come to the story of Esther, we're actually jumping in chapter 4, so a little late in the story, and we're jumping into the story of Esther in chapter 4 even a little bit later. So the reading's a little larger than I'm going to cover today. But essentially what the situation is Esther is in the king's harem, and she is one of the, if not, she becomes the favorite wife of the very powerful king Artaxerxes. But as her life begins to unfold in that position, she begins to become privy to a lot of information just because she is around the courts of the kingdom and the ruler day in and day out. And she uncovers this plan for the destruction of the Jews. She is a Jew, kind of undercover. And so these are her people that are being oppressed and are going to be severely mistreated. And so it's interesting that this story kind of comes up in a week where we're having a broad national conversation about ethnicity and relationships and the treatment of others. This is the story of Esther. This plan is uncovered and sent to Esther. And so why don't we just kind of, I've already shown you that. Why don't we just kind of jump into the story right there? Esther has now learned of this plan, and so she tells her eunuch, which is the individual kind of who is her assistant, who's there to serve and to help her, to go back and to relay this message to Mordecai, her uncle. Mordecai was the one who let her know that all of this was going on, and he's hoping that she's going to be able to get involved. She's in a very powerful position next to the king, who is the most powerful person. So what better situation could there be than somebody to be in the right place at the right time in order to solve this justice issue and protect an entire nation of people? So this is her response to getting involved. All the king's officials and even the people in the province know that anyone who appears before the king in his inner court without being invited is doomed to die unless the king holds out his golden scepter. So Esther is writing back, sending the message to her uncle that, yes, I understand that the ethnic cleansing of an entire race of people is seemingly going to happen, but you don't understand that if I go before the king uninvited, there is a great chance that I'm going to lose my life for having the audacity to do that. She's not an 8. An 8, a challenging personality, that injustice person would have immediately put their life on the line, would have immediately put their neck on the line in order to do whatever they could, if anything, in order to protect people who are being unjustly destroyed. This is not Esther. Esther is the opposite of what that is. And I need you to know, Uncle, The king has not called me to come to him for 30 days. So the eunuch Hathach gave Esther's message to Mordecai. Esther's waiting for an 8. Esther is saying, this is not me. I have not been invited. I don't have permission to do this. I can't or I won't insert myself into this issue. And I understand that it's a really important issue, but there are rules. There are boundaries, and I don't have an inroad in order to solve this. I know that I'm in a position that it seems as though I can just walk in and do this and speak my piece, but I can't. I have to keep peace. And so she sends it back to Mordecai. She's waiting for an 8. She's looking all around and saying, I am not the person who is going to solve this problem. You need to find somebody else who can solve this. This is not me. Oftentimes, as individuals, this is the conundrum that we get into. Whether you're a 9 or not, there are those moments where we have to make a decision between keeping peace or raising ruckus. At their best, 9s naturally are mediators. At their best, 9s do this really well, seeing two sides to every story, acting out of a true desire to restore peace and harmony without controlling others. Esther has the perfect personality to solve this problem between those who want to destroy the Jews and the king who can prevent that from happening. She's in the perfect position to do that and can do it in a way that isn't like a bull in a china shop, that's going to mediate, that's going to cause peace, that's going to somehow or other creatively bring the two sides together with the least amount of chaos as possible. But right now, her personality is actually being a little counterproductive to what the end result needs to be. Because at their worst, 9s can have a very hard time being sure of themselves. She's not sure that the king is going to drop that golden scepter and say, it's okay that you've come. So she's not sure of her position with the king. And also, at their worst, 9s can have difficulty making tough decisions. This is a tough decision. She's trying to avoid making the decision of getting involved. And so she kicks it back to her uncle and says, there's nothing I can do. The problem is, as we say right here, she merged her own agenda with others in an attempt to avoid healthy conflict. She merged her own agenda, which is staying alive, with this problem in order to avoid healthy conflict. And there's such a thing as healthy conflict, right? Well, there must be. Let's keep going. So Mordecai, the uncle, receives Esther's message saying, if I do, I might die. My hands are tied. It's at least 30 days before I have been invited to come in. If I come in before those 30 days are up, it is possible, maybe even likely or probable, that I'm not going to live to even tell the king what the issue is and that this is going on behind the scenes and he doesn't know it. So Mordecai, who may have been a challenger personality, fighting for injustice, very bold, Mordecai says, don't you think for a moment, Esther, that because you're in the palace, you're going to escape when all of the other Jews are being killed. Mordecai says, you know what? You have allowed your mind to create this scenario where your life isn't already on the line. Do you not understand this, Esther? You are a Jew, and so you will die one way or the other now. You will either die by not going to the king and trying to fix this, so you're going to die with all the other Jews, or you'll die by going to the king and him taking your head off. So you have to make a decision as to how you want to die. One of those means certain death, and keeping the peace and not getting involved means certain death. One of those has potential to save your life and all of the other Jews' lives. If you keep quiet at a time like this, he says, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place. If you don't do this, God will raise up somebody else. But you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this. And I love that line. I think it's one of the best lines in Scripture. For such a time as this. Oftentimes, I think that we get into this scenario in our mind and in our life where we believe that we are here and that God is there and that there is a connection that is sometimes there through prayer, but that we're on our own. And Mordecai says, you know what? There's a reason that you are where you are in this moment of need. And you can't ignore this. In fact, if you ignore that, you may be ignoring the very reason why you are there to begin with. You have been placed in this position next to Xerxes for this very moment. This is your moment. And this is the difficulty for people who are reserved, who are quiet, who are introverts, who are peacemakers. This is the difficulty, is having the strength of will to seize that moment when it presents itself. But we must. But you must. Sometimes peace only comes through pain. Sometimes conflict is the only path to healing, to hope, to peace. For a personality type that is a mediator, that sees their mission in life as to prevent conflict through mediation, through peacemaking, through massaging people and systems in order to help them get along without coming to a crisis point, it can be very difficult for people like that to willingly choose pain or conflict because we're conflict avoiders, right? Who wants to go through that conflict with your spouse, with your significant other? Who wants to go through that painful conflict with work, with your kids? Who wants to walk through that difficulty if you don't have to? But sometimes the only way that it gets resolved is by walking through that conflict. When nines do this, when peacemakers do this, they become the best mediators and the best peacemakers there are. Whenever we realize, whenever you realize that peace can be on the other side of pain, nines will often say, I will take pain for $200, Alex. I will gladly walk through conflict if it will bring peace. Never assume that a peacemaker won't create conflict in order to bring peace from pain. So Esther sends this reply to Mordecai. Go and gather all of the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Don't eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. And so this is a spiritual act here that they are doing in order to center themselves and their hearts and their minds on God in prayer and solidarity for Esther as she has now committed to involving herself. My maids and I will do the same. And then though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. And if I must die, I must die. For somebody of Esther's personality, this is quite a statement. If I must die, I must die. So Mordecai goes away and does everything that Esther had ordered him to do. When stressed, this personality type that Esther has, and that many of us have as well, become overcommitted, worried, rigid, and anxious, doubt themselves, which makes decision-making harder. Stress is a very real thing for all of us, and this is what you've got to watch. If you're a peacemaker personality type, you got to be careful of overcommitment, of worry, that gets in the way of progress, of being too rigid, as she was with Mordecai, about what the rules are and what the boundaries were, that it wasn't okay. It was okay. She just wasn't okay with doing it. Clearly, she was anxious. Who wouldn't be? She doubted herself. She doubted her position with the king. She doubted that she had the ability to be loved and to be accepted by him. She was wrong. And it made her decision making harder because she had such a fear, and I think maybe even a low self-esteem here. But when Mordecai convinces her to be secure in who she's created to be and the place in which she had been placed and in her abilities, she took command. And whenever we are secure in who God has created us to be, we do that as well. We finally take command of our lives. We struggle less with being stalled, with inertia, momentum. Nines particularly, whenever they are secure in who they are and who they were created to be and where they have been placed, become very decisive, goal-oriented, self-confident, and believe their presence in the world matters. And your presence in the world matters too. There is no person more powerful or effective than a nine who chooses willingly to act, to be involved. There is no person, no peacemaker, who is more powerful or effective than when they actually choose to involve themselves, to stand up and say no more, to challenge a situation that seems dire. Just because you're a peacemaker doesn't mean that you can't fight and act for injustice. In fact, you must. It's not just the bold, brash personality types who are always taking care of the bullies. Sometimes you've got to do it yourself. Sometimes you need to do it yourself so that you can believe in you and so that you can believe in the you that God created you to uniquely be. Until tomorrow.